Every town has a dark side. But what if I told you that the Grand Canyon, in addition to being one of the 7 natural wonders of the world, is also the site of a disproportional amount of unexplained disappearances? Over 1,100 people have vanished here since 2018, and that's the highest in any area of the whole United States. And on top of that, well, really that's just the beginning. Because beneath its towering cliffs, there appears to be secrets here that have been actively buried for centuries. Things like hidden tunnels, ancient artifacts that don't belong, and even evidence of advanced lost civilizations. So what's this all about? And are these things connected? And what else could be hiding right now along all those restricted areas of the Grand Canyon? Hey guys, it's Andrew, and thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Everytown. We have a pretty good dive here for all those interested in thinking outside the box. And most of us don't think of the Grand Canyon as a place that could even be riddled with secrets because it's right there for anybody to visit. And you can take photos, videos, even fly over it. But the reality is that 90% of the Grand Canyon traffic is concentrated on the south end, which means the majority of this place is totally off limits. In an area that covers just about 2,000 square miles, well, that's a lot of places people have never seen. Or have they? And that's exactly why so many of them are never heard from again. The Grand Canyon is a natural wonder that's been shaped over millions of years. Its beauty has fascinated us for centuries, and for some time it was a free-for-all in terms of being able to be explored. And there was no national park designation, so in the Wild West days, for example, if you wanted to, you could wander into whatever cave, cliff, or crevasse you could find. But just around the time that we began getting more sophisticated with our exploring capabilities, well, wouldn't you know it, it was time to shut all that down. It was in 1908 when President Teddy Roosevelt was making the moves to declare the area off limits to mining and logging operations. And after that was established, they could then cut the general public off to wherever they saw fit. And seeing these restrictions on the horizon, a flurry of adventurous people set out to explore the area before it was too late. And one of those individuals was a man named G.E. Kincaid, who at the imminent closure of the canyon decided to seize the last opportunity to explore its darkest corners in search of precious minerals. Instead, though, he actually ended up triggering one of the most intriguing mysteries in all of modern history. Riding up the Colorado River in a small wooden boat, Kincaid navigated between the majestic cliffs until he was about 40 miles from the Tover Crystal Canyon. And that's when he noticed strange markings on a rock formation above. And these were high up the cliff, so he couldn't tell what they were exactly. Driven by curiosity, he docked the boat and began climbing. After a strenuous ascent, he then discovered a series of steps carved into the sandstone, hidden beneath desert shrubs, and he couldn't believe what he was seeing. And these steps led him to a cavernous entrance, only it wasn't a totally natural formation. Now, this one had been formed by the hand of somebody. Hard and straight edges created a large doorway. Kincaid lit his lantern and entered the cave where what he found defied all logic. And the walls were covered with inscriptions that didn't resemble any known language in North America. Instead, the symbols looked a lot like ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics, only a bit different. As he moved forward, the passage stretched so far he couldn't tell where it ended. And there were other doorways that led to other halls and rooms. It was some sort of large underground complex, built by what could have only been an advanced civilization. As Kincaid looked around, he documented everything he was finding. The main tunnel was approximately 12 feet wide and tapered towards the ends. Along the sides, passages branched off, leading to rooms carved with geometric precision. And some rooms were as large as a regular living room, but others measured much bigger, 30 by 40 square feet. And the entranceways were curved, not straight angles, and the walls were ventilated with circular openings carefully drilled. Inside some of the rooms, Kincaid found shelves filled with glazed ceramic jars, many of which still contained seeds in them. He also found copper tools and described a workshop with remnants of charcoal and slag, evidence that the ancient residents practiced metal smelting. But the most astonishing discovery was a large room that Kincaid described as a crypt. There, among stone shelves carved into the rock, he found dozens of mummies, each inside its own rocky casing. In the lower levels, the jars were more rudimentary, while those on the upper levels featured more elaborate designs, suggesting a sort of cultural evolution over time. How long had this culture been there? And how long would it take to create such a large structure? And how far did it really go? Overwhelmed, Kincaid needed help, and this was going to change the entire world and all the history books ever written. Sending artifacts and notes to the Smithsonian Institute, he requested financial and logistical support. And within weeks, Professor S.A. Jordan arrived with a team of 40 scientists and workers, and everybody was excited to see what else they could uncover. With more resources, the expedition confirmed that the tunnels converged into a central chamber, and there they found a giant statue. The figure, sitting with its legs crossed, was holding lotus flowers in both hands, resembling more modern depictions of Buddha. However, the researchers couldn't definitively identify the culture behind the statue. This was something totally different from anything we knew about. And people were not supposed to have even stepped foot in North America until about 15,000 years ago, and those that did were primitive. And supposedly it stayed that way until Columbus sailed the ocean blue, and over the past 500 years, we've built the America we know. And this site would prove that all of that was completely wrong. The team nicknamed the site the Citadel. As they explored further, they discovered barracks, grain storage facilities, temples, and workshops. Whoever lived here, well, they were making tools and weapons out of copper, bronze, and a gray metal they couldn't identify, and possibly platinum. They also found stone tablets engraved with hieroglyphs, the translation of which remained a mystery. The mummies, all male, reinforced the theory that this section of the complex was a military barracks. No women or children were discovered, raising questions about the actual function of the place. Despite the lack of answers, the team concluded that this lost civilization was highly advanced with knowledge of agriculture, metallurgy, and architecture. The discovery sparked controversy, to say the least, as it suggested the existence of an advanced civilization in North America long before what conventional archaeology accepted. And the similarities to Egyptian and Tibetan cultures were undeniable, but how could that be? Well, unfortunately, we weren't able to find out, or at least us common folk have not been privy to the findings. The story here took a dark turn when the Smithsonian, after receiving the reports, allegedly denied funding the expedition or even receiving artifacts from Kincaid altogether. This fueled conspiracy theories that exist today about a cover-up to protect traditional historical narratives. It made Kincaid look like a crackpot, guy who made up the story entirely, and maybe that's what he did. But also, maybe the powers to be in this country didn't want this sort of information getting out to the masses. Knowledge, as they say, is power, and And if we had to change the entire timeline of world history based on this finding, what would that do to the world in terms of our beliefs? Religions could be questioned, and scientific and archaeological authorities could not be trusted. And that's a big problem if you want to stay in control. And today, there are no official records of Kincaid's findings. However, access to many areas of the Grand Canyon are restricted, leading to speculation about forbidden zones that may hold more secrets. And some believe the complex could be the key to uncovering lost connections between ancient civilizations, while others see Kincaid's story as nothing but a fabricated tale meant to get attention. So then, what is off limits exactly and why? Well, they're called the Forbidden Zones, and perhaps you've heard the name mentioned, as it's become synonymous with the Grand Canyon. The caves, for example, are forbidden zones, which, by the way, of the more than 1,000 they've documented in the park, only 325 have properly been mapped and explored, so who even knows what's in the others? And this name, though, isn't official. It's not like the park itself calls places they don't want you to go forbidden zones. That's just what they've evolved into being called in popular culture. Among the most notable of these places are the Hopi salt mines. And these are located at the confluence of the Colorado and Little Colorado rivers. And this area is sacred to the Hopi and other indigenous tribes because the salt extracted here is used in religious ceremonies dating back hundreds of years. So access to these mines is restricted. The Anasazi Bridge, constructed with pine logs and located over 300 feet above the Colorado River. This is believed to have been used by the ancestral indigenous cultures as a pathway to cross the canyon. However, access anywhere around this area is prohibited due to the instability of the red wall limestone. And Furnace Flats is a site that dates back to 1050 to 1100 AD. It contains a masonry room with a hearth, a ventilation duct, and numerous artifacts. Excavations have uncovered stone tools here and decorated ceramic fragments. The area is closed to the public to protect its integrity, as human traffic could damage the delicate structures. And the list goes on. There's the Maricopa Point area, which is a sanctuary for rare plants. The Orphan Mine was used for uranium extraction until 1969, and this site is closed to the public due to persistent radiation. Another forbidden place is the Bass Asbestos Mine, closed due to the health risks associated with asbestos. And then there's the infamous Egyptian cave as well, that Kincaid found. An article published in 1909 in the Arizona Gazette claimed that an expedition discovered this cave with Egyptian mummies and artifacts in the Grand Canyon. And while the story has been, as we mentioned, quote-unquote debunked, the area where this cave was supposedly found is totally restricted. So the bottom line is there are a lot of forbidden zones you can't go to. A lot of different reasons why. And some of you may think that all makes sense, but many feel like it's a bit of an overreach, that maybe there's more to the story. And still though, just because a sign tells you not to go somewhere doesn't mean that everybody listens. And there are a lot of images online of people blatantly ignoring them and stories of crossing a boundary only to be met by Black Hawk helicopters coming swooping in to warn of imminent danger if you don't turn back. Obviously, we don't know how many of these stories are real, but one thing we do know for sure is that the number of disappearances in this place has increased over time, and they're only getting more frequent. And is there a connection to these canyons' deep secrets and the strange vanishings? Well, it's very possible.
Vanished without a trace It's been 6 months since a San Antonio man went missing at the Grand Canyon.
Drake Kramer's family says he loved nature.
And Drake Kramer was a 21-year-old geology student at the University of Texas. And so by all accounts, he was excited to take a visit to the Grand Canyon to check it out with his own two eyes. On January 31st, he registered in at the Bright Angel Lodge, located on the south rim of the park. The following day, February 1st, 2015, he checked out, and that was the last time anyone saw him again. By February 2nd, with still no word, which was unlike him, his family reported him missing.
Hello?
At that point, the National Park Service launched a search and rescue operation, where authorities conducted ground and aerial searches, including the use of canine teams and technical explorations in hard-to-reach areas. Despite these efforts, though, no trace of Drake has ever been found. And his story does certainly sound strange. I mean, how could a young guy like that just disappear out of the blue? It's not like a lot of time had passed. He literally could only have gotten so far. The only way, really, he could have vanished in such a way is if perhaps he didn't want to be found. And as it turns out, that might be the case. And part of the reason why his family was so quick to call for help was because on the day he went missing, he sent a text back to his family members, one that felt very ominous.
His last text to his father was cryptic, saying he needed to be back with Mother Earth and set his soul free.
If this were the sad case, then maybe he made his way into a very secluded, even off-limits part of the park on purpose. Maybe one of those unexplored caves. He did the unthinkable. It's hard to know for sure, but it could make sense why no trace of him has ever been found. While Drake's story might not be all that mysterious, others are not so clearly cut and dry.
Now, search and rescue teams take to the skies as the hunt for the missing river guide Morgan Heimer continues in the Grand Canyon.
Morgan Heimer, a 22-year-old river guide, disappeared on June 2nd of 2015.
About 8 p.m. on June 2nd, our park dispatch received a satellite phone call from a commercial river trip, and that trip reported that one of their guides had been missing.
At the time, Heimer was an experienced guide, bringing a group of tourists down the river on a fairly routine trip. And this one lasted a few days, so they would make a lot of stops and camp out at night. And one day, he got separated from the group. And by the time anyone realized, well, that was it. He was gone.
It was too late that evening to do any sort of searching, so we did aerial searches yesterday with the helicopter, and today we have 3 ground teams searching, as well as 1 team on the river.
But no trace of him was ever discovered. The case of Floyd Roberts is another deeply unsettling one. In June of 2016, the 52-year-old separated from his group during a hike on the remote Shivets Plateau on the western side of the Grand Canyon. During a descent, Roberts fell behind his companions just a little bit, something that happens from time to time but shouldn't be a big deal. And he'd catch up while they waited, only he never came. And so they doubled back to get him, but by then Floyd was gone.
On Saturday afternoon, the National Park Service received a call from a member of Robert's backpacking group that he was missing.
The search and rescue effort for Roberts was one of the largest in the park's history. What makes his case particularly strange is that these guys were in a remote area. In other words, nobody else was around. You would think there would be some sign of him being there over the course of several days, no matter what happened, and yet there was nothing.
The area where Roberts went missing is rugged and covered in thick brush, and it takes several hours for rangers to get in and out. Add in the extreme temperatures, and searchers know they are in a race against the clock.
Some theorize that Roberts succumbed to the harsh conditions and his remains were hidden somehow by the unforgiving terrain. But others believe he could have encountered someone, or really something, that led to the whole mysterious disappearance. A more recent case involves 66-year-old Martha Overholzer.
At this hour, a search underway in the Grand Canyon National Park for a woman who went missing from Mather Point on the South Rim last week. 66-year-old Martha Overholzer was last seen.
Witnesses reported that she seemed to be enjoying the view before walking west from Mather Point, possibly towards the Bright Angel Lodge or Hermit's Rest. However, when she did not return, an immediate search was initiated. Specialized teams scoured the area for days using drones and mapping technology, but found no trace of her whereabouts. Her disappearance raises serious questions about how somebody could vanish without a trace in such a heavily trafficked tourist area. And there are many, many more stories just like this, and people who are here one minute and gone the next, and nobody ever finding a shred of evidence as to where they went or what happened. It does seem to be a bit odd, there's no question. And so the many strange theories people have as to what's going on is understandable. And there are those who will say it has something to do with the ancient civilization that Kincaid found that's been covered up. That the land itself is alive in a way that we don't understand, which is why they built there in the first place. And this land, or the spirits or the civilization that still lives there in these forbidden zones, has something to do with all these people going missing. In the same vein as this idea is the one that has had park rangers noticing something peculiar in recent years. And people who, after taking stones, fossils, or even fragments of plants from the park, going on to experiencing a series of unfortunate events in their lives. And these stories vary, but many claim that those who take souvenirs from the canyon feel as though they are being followed by bad luck or suffer inexplicable accidents. And this phenomenon has become so common that some tourists, moved by the belief that the objects they removed are cursed, have returned them to the park, often accompanied by letters apologizing for taking something they now feel has brought them misfortune. Then again, maybe all that's made up by the park rangers themselves, in order to deter people from taking things from the canyon, which they strongly urge against.
The only history that we know is the one we go discover on our own time. The one that's presented to us is not history, it's all lies.
It was not all lies.
Others will say that our government, in an effort to keep the ancient secrets under wraps, has a heavy presence in the canyon that we cannot see, maybe even occupy some of the caves that are decked out in modern tech, and tech beyond modern perhaps, like another Area 51. And then there are those who look for a more grounded explanation, and those who think that, yeah, the canyon is huge and rocky and very hot and dangerous. So if you go messing around there, then anything can happen. All bets are off. And the very reason people are not found is because this place is so dangerous and cavernous and big, which people forget because of its beauty. The Grand Canyon is absolutely stunning and amazing, and it's hard to know what the truth is about this place. It is magical, but not necessarily in the ways we talked about. Just in that if you see it for yourself, it forces you to drop your jaw in awe. It makes the mind wonder, and within all that, fantastical stories can be created to help explain those feelings. The canyon does have secrets. It's been around for millions of years and has seen all sorts of things in its lifetime. And so when you look down into it, you can get a true sense of that and want to know everything that it does. It will make people hike further than they normally would just to see what's around the bend. That can get you in trouble. It's one of the 7 natural wonders because it makes you wonder. And likely, that's why there's so much mystery surrounding it. And then again, if there were proof of some ancient civilization here, I wouldn't put it past our overlords to keep that secret at all costs. And so that's it for this week's episode of Everytown. I hope you all enjoyed it. Check out some more of our videos right here. For exclusive episodes that are dark and you can't find anywhere else, check us out on Patreon for a free trial. Remember to come on back next week for another episode filled with scary, strange, and mysterious stories, because you never know. Maybe your town will be next.